Individual with a military flare in the course of 30 seconds burnt down the entire Patrick Cudahy plant. Nobody would have ever thought that that would have happened. Luckily, Patrick Cudahy was large enough to survive. For most businesses, that would have meant the end of their existence. You have a key cost executive who embezzles $34 million. She buys more clothing than she could ever wear in her lifetime. She had to hire people to unload her delivery trucks for her. She didn't need the money. She was a vice president. Her husband was a physician. Yet luckily, this company Cost was able to survive. They were able to absorb that financial loss. For most businesses, that would have meant the end of their existence. When I was in the ice cream business in Dallas, a lot of my friends were small business owners. About half of them were victims of embezzlement, and a lot of them ended up going out of business because of that. When I was stationed in Dallas, there was a crime that happened down in Austin. Austin's a few hours away. It's similar to Madison. It's a college town, very free-spirited, about 1 million people. Well, on the busiest street in Austin at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday evening, there was a robbery that went bad. 4 teenage girls aged 13 to 17 were sexually assaulted and murdered during this robbery. This crime haunted Austin. You have no idea to what extent. Even now, 15 years later, it still haunts Austin to this day. It's one of the black marks on the city of Austin. Imagine what a crime like that would do in a community like Sun Prairie. Similar crime happened in Georgetown, upscale area of Washington, D.C. Robbery went bad at a Starbucks. It was closing time on a Sunday evening, very busy street. 3 college-age employees were murdered during this robbery. If you walk by the Starbucks till this day, there still are flowers that people put out. There still is a shrine that's set up for those employees. There's a lot of different types of crime that can affect businesses. You've got burglary, robbery, theft, fraud, arson, extortion, embezzlement, and what you hear a lot about lately, disgruntled and former employee attacks. I'm sure you all heard a couple months ago there was a immigration and customs enforcement agent in California who was getting his supervisor was doing a discipline evaluation with him. He pulled out his weapon, ended up shooting the supervisor, and he was killed by other agents. If it can happen there, it can certainly happen in any work environment. So what does a business owner do? You open up your gas and your bait store here in Sun Prairie. What do you do to protect yourselves against crime? You can try and deter crime. You can put lights around your perimeter to make it easy to detect if somebody's trying to break in. You may try and prevent crime by buying state-of-the-art lock system, security system. You may even help the Sun Prairie Police Department with information that you have, even help them locate criminals. However, in order to do any of these things, you have to have knowledge. If you don't know what's going on in your community, even outside of your community, you can't accomplish any of those things. When I spoke with the crime prevention officer for the city of Madison, he said the #1 complaint of businesses is they want to be better informed of what's going on, not only in their area, but just in the area surrounding where they're located. And that was part of the motivation for the Attorney General to create the Crime Alert Network. But the real motivation was a child abduction case that happened back in 2007 in Middleton. A father abducted 4 of his biological children, 2 different mothers, and when he picked up the children, he took away their cell phones. He had a rental car, didn't have his cell phone, he didn't want to be located. Well, when the mothers couldn't reach their children, they became very concerned and they contacted police. When police interviewed friends and associates of the father, who actually was a firefighter, so don't think it can't happen in your world, they learned he had become very unstable lately. Well, the father checked into a motel in northern Wisconsin. He paid by cash. He didn't want to be located. And the court said, we need a credit card for incidental expenses, which he reluctantly gave. Our agency found out that he had stayed at this motel, but he'd already left. The mother said if he was in this part of Wisconsin, he was probably going to northern Minnesota. So we contacted the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which at the time had the first and the only Crime Alert Network. They issued an alert through the Crime Alert Network, and lo and behold, a clerk at a small motel received the alert with photographs of the children. The father checked in. She called police. When police arrived, the father was at his vehicle. He had the trunk open. He was in the process of getting out his shotgun that he had purchased 48 hours earlier with the intention of killing the 4 children and then himself. Well, that's when the Attorney General said, we've already had success using the Crime Alert Network in Minnesota. There's no reason why Wisconsin shouldn't have their own Crime Alert Network. How many of you saw the alerts about the 2 missing children out of Tennessee that just came out yesterday? This individual had murdered the mother, murdered the 14-year-old daughter, and has the other 2 children with him. We actually sent out an alert about that as well. These things, unfortunately, they're a pretty common occurrence. So the Attorney General decided to create the Wisconsin Crime Alert Network. It took 3 passes through the state legislature. If you look real closely, you'll see some smudge marks. I had to white out the protesters that wouldn't move from mine. I would even talk about the recall trucks that were driving around. And what the Senate bill did is allowed for creating the Wisconsin Crime Alert Network. It also allowed the Department of Justice to charge a nominal participation fee. This program costs you $12 a year to join. It's paid for entirely through subscription fees, not paid for by taxpayer dollars. I can't tell you how many emails and phone calls I get from people who they say, this is ridiculous, it should be free. I'm like, well, free means paid for by taxpayer dollars. Well, I don't care, it should be free. So, but the only way we could get it passed through the state legislature is because it's really geared towards a business community, is they said, well, we'll have the users pay for the system. So we actually fought to keep it as reasonable as possible.